It was clear to everyone following the development of Sea of Stars that it was going to be a beautiful game, and yet somehow it still managed to surprise me in motion. I'm not resorting to hyperbole when I say that, for me, it's among the most visually appealing video games in recent memory. It's also a joy to play, not only reminding me of why I fell in love with this genre to begin with, but also demonstrating beyond any doubt that this particular philosophy for game design is neither old-fashioned nor outdated. Whoever decided that and made the first steps toward pushing the industry to collectively shift away from this foundation and framework for RPGs was wrong. There is still plenty of life in this formula, plenty of room for creativity, and plenty of demand from players willing to buy. That said, after all of that praise, I'd like to add that while developer Sabotage Studio has captured just about everything I loved about the great RPGs of the 16-bit era, and disposed of much of what I disliked, it takes a similar approach to storytelling here as it did in its premier title, The Messenger. It also shares a universe with the game world of that title. Anyway, all of this is to say that it doesn't feign to take itself seriously, and at times serves as a sort of parody of the genre, while attempting to also give genuine reverence to it. While I feel like that worked for The Messenger, in this case it misses part of the essence of what made JRPGs of that era special. Their attempts at a real sense of gravitas and personal drama that was balanced out by charm and humor. Sea of Stars seems far more interested in the latter than the former, and that in and of itself isn't a bad thing. After all, many of the game's direct inspirations, such as Mario RPG, also fell much further on that side of the spectrum. However, Sea of Stars isn't funny or charming enough to deliver on that sort of tone, and so the result is that this cast of characters is, in turn, neither charming nor complex enough to be memorable. Despite this, I can't stress enough how much I enjoy playing this game. Exploring this world, in particular, has been a blast. I'm not even sure I can recount how many times I've seen chests tucked away in some corner of the screen and asked myself, alright, now how do I get up there? This element of exploration is one I've sorely missed in most modern RPGs, which tend to over-rely on waypoints, exceptionally linear map designs, and obvious environmental visual cues to point exactly where the player is supposed to go. This game, on the other hand, is packed with little secrets that not only encourage thorough exploration, but also got me to enjoy backtracking to make sure I didn't miss anything. And the best part of all of this is that the player is rewarded for that effort. The towns, dungeons, and areas in between are massive, intertwined with multiple paths, platforms to climb, and clever puzzles. In many ways, the dungeons reminded me of Golden Sun, which to this day has featured my favorite dungeon design in any JRPG. I really can't praise them enough. They're brilliant, and alone make a purchase of this game worth it. Every RPG of this kind ought to be taking notes from Sea of Stars. When I first arrived in Brisk, for example, I spent over 40 minutes just exploring all its nooks and crannies before even thinking about proceeding with the next objective of the main story. It's incredibly dense and intricately designed. I've also thoroughly enjoyed the combat in this game. While this may be more of a controversial opinion, I've always liked action time press commands, as are typically found in all of the Mario RPG games, or something like Legend of Dragoon, or even Lost Odyssey, which give a little extra damage or a little extra defense if performed with the right timing. And I wish more games implemented this. I'm also a huge proponent of axing random encounters in favor of putting enemies on the field and allowing the player to engage or navigate around them at will. In my experience with command-based RPGs that feature random encounters, I tend to grow tired of combat in the final hours of the game, whereas in games like this, which use Chrono Trigger as an inspiration, combat remains engaging from beginning to end. This is especially true when each battle requires the extra attention of action time press commands, which may seem inconsequential for a single turn, but by the end of longer fights truly makes a big difference. There are also lots of combo abilities, again very Chrono Trigger-esque, that are discovered out in the world rather than through leveling up. The combat is challenging because, as a general rule, the enemies just hit really hard in this game. I'm a huge fan of this though, as it forces you to learn and utilize every aspect of the combat system, encourages prudent use of items, and makes item management meaningful. Overall, it serves to significantly decrease the overall number of battles you'll fight from a typical JRPG of this kind, but makes each battle more difficult and engaging, and it also eliminates any need for grinding. What this overall package left me with from a gameplay perspective was everything I loved from Chrono Trigger, Mario RPG, and Golden Sun, while trimming all of the fat, fluff, and filler that most JRPGs tend to have. There is nothing on this account that I would criticize. It's just amazingly fun to play. Which leads me to my biggest takeaway from my time playing this game. I'm really not sure why this particular formula, this framework, this blueprint, whatever you want to call it, seems to have disappeared from the higher budget and AAA space. I really think we can have games designed like this, with an isometric view or fixed camera angles, an overworld map, fully controllable vehicles and airships, command-based combat, and complex, clever dungeon design, all while having a visual aesthetic and art style, voice acting, and animation that make it feel modern. I just don't understand why this particular style of JRPG had to be lost to time outside of small budget and indie homage projects like this. Anyway, while the story hasn't really done much for me, it also doesn't do anything to significantly hurt the experience either. It's very by the numbers and pokes fun at itself for being tropey numerous times, but it also lacks any real sense of interpersonal drama or conflict, even though I really do feel like they had a good setup to have done that. The villains of the story get about 30 seconds of screen time before a big event more than 10 hours into the game, and even then there's very little that is interesting about them. In that sense, this game goes for more of the standard storytelling approach seen in the SNES era of JRPGs, rather than the more complex PS1 era. There are also numerous grammatical errors in the script, as others have pointed out, but with the financial success this game has had, I see no reason why a patch couldn't be released soon after sending the script to an editor. The dialogue is something I've seen brought up quite a bit as well, and yes, it's very reminiscent of that Whedon speak or Buffy speak that's really popular right now, but the game is also going for a Saturday morning cartoon vibe, so I don't think it's necessarily out of place. I do agree overall, though, I'm not a big fan of that style of dialogue. Nevertheless, the presentation is phenomenal. Visually, it is about as polished as it could possibly be. I know there are going to be people who won't dig this art style, and I get why. But as far as executing on that style, it really couldn't have been done any better. The music is pleasant as well, and of course, I couldn't make a video on this game without mentioning that Yasunori Mitsuda was a guest composer for 10 tracks, and his are, of course, amazing, and clearly the most well-balanced and mixed of the bunch. But I really don't want saying that to take away from Eric Brown's work here either. Let's just say there are a lot of tracks that have been stuck in my head over the last couple of weeks. Overall, I've really enjoyed my time with Sea of Stars. I think it's worth picking up strictly because I love this style of game, and I miss them terribly. So anytime that we can get one as well designed, as thoughtfully put together, and as lovingly crafted as this, that it's absolutely worth diving into. Now I just want to see somebody take the same amount of love and care crafting the gameplay, but also implement a story that can really move me. Once I'm able to find that, I feel like we'll have recaptured the best of what I loved playing these games growing up. In any case, thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think of Sea of Stars in the comments, and I'll talk to you again really soon.